group were joined overnight by Joan Ryan, Labour MP, who said she'd had enough of the anti-Jewish racism that existed within the Labour Party. But the real story today were three Conservative MPs, Heidi Allen, Anna Soubry, and indeed Sarah Wollaston, who decided that they would join the independent group today. They would leave the Conservative Party and join the independent group. Let's listen to the logic and the reasoning behind them, beginning with Heidi Allen telling us that she believes the country is behind them.
Once there were 7, and now there are 11. And at the last count, about 115,000 Twitter followers. So yes, we are putting our heads above the parapet, and we might fail. But isn't the prize worth fighting for? And I sense the country wants us to fight for it too. And I, for one, am prepared to give it everything I've got.
So the prize, Heidi Allen talking about the prize, not stating it, but of course the prize is to stop Brexit. Anna Soubry then attacked what she saw as the right-wing awkward squad.
Well, as my friend, and he is my friend, Chuka Umunna said on Monday, you don't join a political party to fight it, and you don't stay in it and skirmish in the margins when the truth is the battle is over and the other side has won. The right wing, the hardline anti-EU awkward squad that have destroyed every leader for the last 40 years are now running the Conservative Party from top to toe.
So get that, will you please? Understand that if you're against the European Union and you support Brexit, you are right-wing. Really, I find that very, very odd, Anna. Smacks a bit of sour grapes. Isn't the point, really, that the country voted to leave the European Union, and that, I think UKIP in many ways, has had a huge effect upon Tory voters' opinions in this country. So she's right to say that they've lost, but the battle she now wants to fight I find very odd. But she goes on talking about this shift to the right.
The shift to the right began shortly after Theresa May became leader. And notwithstanding her fine words on the steps of Downing Street, which, as Sarah says, we all three of us cheered, within a few months, the modernising reforms that had taken years to achieve were destroyed. Citizens of the world were cast out as citizens of nowhere. Remain voters marginalised and insulted as members of the liberal metropolitan elite. That didn't go down very well in places like Broxtowe amongst my Remain voters.
Well, Anna, I don't know who's been cast out. To my knowledge, nobody's actually been cast out. I find that a very, very strange argument, but she finishes off with a direct appeal to you to help and support her.
And to the millions of people who feel abandoned and not represented by either of our two broken main parties, and indeed all our parties, we share your values, your dreams and your aspirations.
There you go.
We three have never been called your so-called typical Tory. Like everyone, we're tired of labels, we're tired of tribalism, and we're tired of British politics being dominated from its extremes. It's time for change, and we are a team with your support that will deliver that change.
Well, she wants your support, and yet they're not even a registered party, as I've said already. But you can see what's happening here. Brexit is being painted out to be some extreme right-wing view. Anna, 5 million Labour voters voted for Brexit. Brexit has never been about left or right. It's, to me, about right or wrong, but you can recast that and say it's about should we be a self-governing independent country or part of a political project called the European Union. So they're reaching out. They're saying they believe that they're representing something fresh, something new. The truth, in my view is that what they're trying to do is overturn not just the referendum result, but indeed the manifestos upon which they stood in the 2017 general election. Tell me, does Anna Soubry, to now the 11 in the independent group, do they share your views, your dreams, your aspirations? Let me know. Do you feel they represent you? And if you think, hooray, at last there's someone to vote for, call 0345 6060 973. Or is it just cynical political words, a repositioning that doesn't really amount to a row of beans? If you feel that, text to 84850, or do you just feel they're a disaffected group, marginalised in both their own parties, desperate for Britain to remain, and that's why they're doing this? If you do, please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course, Facebookers, you can comment too. I do wonder, though, whether the ground that these people are seeking isn't actually rather inhabited already. You see, we've got a Labour Party who now are committed to us staying part of a customs union and abiding by single market rules. We've got a Tory Party under Theresa May going for the softest of all Brexits, and a Liberal Democrat Party saying exactly the same things in many ways as this group is saying. I don't think the room is there. I don't feel the space is there. I think they're onto a complete and utter loser. I think all they're doing is representing themselves and their complete refusal to accept the fundamental change that has happened in this country. Tell me I'm wrong. Jonathan is calling from Wellingborough and is a new caller to the show. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Farage. What I've been curious about, and you did reference it there a little bit, is why they have not joined the Liberal Democrats. That would seem a natural place for them to go. I don't agree with them. I am a Brexiteer, but I do admire and respect their moving into a position where they're very likely to fail to overcome the problems of starting a new party in this political system.
Yeah, Jonathan, I can tell you from personal experience, it's quite a tough thing to do.
I think you probably do have some personal experience with that, Mr. Farage.
Just a bit. Yeah. So okay. So, but you admire them for their integrity in terms of their own beliefs.
Yes, I do. I think there is a difference between the people leaving the Conservative Party and the people leaving the Labour Party because of that element of anti-Semitism and the sort of the doctrinaire hard left and intolerant hard left in the Labour Party. So I think it's not an equal thing that these people are moving from two different parties. I think there's different factors at play.
Jonathan, I mean, look, I'm all for people being principled and making stands, but if that's how they feel, why did they stand as Conservatives in 2017 on a manifesto that made it clear that they wanted to leave the single market, leave the customs union, and leave the European Union? Why do that?
Well, I think that's a valid concern, a valid criticism, but I think it is such a big move to leave your political party. And I mean, the political scene has been changing so rapidly. The old certainties have fallen apart. So I can see that maybe they had to take their time, and that maybe they weren't ready. Maybe they weren't ready to make the leap. I mean, politics is so uncertain, and maybe they didn't think it would reach this point. So I don't begrudge them that. I don't criticise them.
All right. Jonathan, let me ask you something. Do you think politically they're going to go anywhere?
They've acknowledged that this is a very high risk and they're very likely to fail. And I admired the one MP, I'm going to forget her name, who said they're putting their heads above the parapet. They realise that there's high risk.
Heidi Allen, yeah.
Yes, and I sort of admired her. In a way, she was putting her principles and her country above partisan politics and her likely political future, and that's why I do. Okay,
no, Jonathan, you've made the point very, very well. I still struggle with the fact they stood on that manifesto, but people doing things because they believe in them, I do rather like that. I just have a touch of me that says they're sore losers. Ian in Red Hill is also a new caller. Good evening, Ian.
Hey, hi Nigel. How you doing? Good.
So do this group represent you, Ian, and represent the good people of Red Hill?
Well, a group, they're just a few people standing at the moment, aren't they? So I don't think they're a group at the moment. Do they represent me? I actually followed your lead and voted for leaving. Mm-hmm. Since then, I've done a complete U-turn, and so whether they represent me or not, I don't know. But if they have also done, if they're not happy with the way things are going, and they're prepared to stand aside and say, do you know what, actually, we think it should go back to the people because of a number of things. We were lied to from the Remainers.
We've had lots of lies over decades, Ian, I can assure you.
Oh, yeah. No, I know this. We were lied to by the Leavers. We were lied to by the Remainers. Basically, no one knew what they were talking about. Everyone voted, and I'm not going to say the reasons I voted. They're my own reasons. However, we were told one thing. It was clearly something different. People voted without knowing what they were voting for. Okay, and I'm
not sure about
I understand
that.
people think.
I'm really not sure about that. I'm really not
Nigel,
sure.
Come on, let's call it. You openly stood there and led everybody along under a bit of a disguise, saying it was going to be this, that, and the other. The reality is, it's not, because you didn't know, and a lot of people believed you. And the same for the people that remained as well. You know, the Remainers. They were told this, that, and the other. They didn't know whether that was right or wrong. No one knew the outcome of this. Okay?
But Ian, if you want a political party, right, that says let's have a second referendum, there already is one. It's called the Lib Dems.
Well, if these people end up joining the Lib Dems, or the Lib Dems end up, disbanding, because they're never going to get back in, because they lied to all of the students, and that's who now is in the majority or a lot of the voters. So they're never going to get back in, are they? The reality is, it's all broken, Nigel.
Ian, I don't disagree with that. I mean, do you think this group potentially, if they form a political party, have a bright future?
If they do, probably not, because politics doesn't work, and I think no one really trusts politicians anymore. They're not qualified in anything. They've never run anything. Or very few of them have, shall we say. Why did we ever think, as a nation, that we could trust people that have never had proper jobs in their life to go and preside over something as complicated as an extraction from a group of countries?
Well, Ian, I just wish they'd kept faith with us. But hey, we could talk for hours. I thank you. And of course, no talk from the Tories or Labour of any prospect of by-elections, despite the fact they believe in democracy so strongly. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show at 6:15. Time for
using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Pete from Wantage really sums up how I feel about this. He says, evening, Nigel. These people should be referred to as the hypocrisy group. They want to take a second referendum back to the people, but not take a by-election to the people. Utter hypocrisy. Plus, they were all elected on Leave manifestos. Pete, I'm with you on all three counts. And let's listen, shall we, to Heidi Allen at that press conference earlier on today being asked about whether she'd call a by-election.
I suppose from my point of view, I mean, Anna's already touched on this partly in terms of the last thing the country needs right now is a general election or any kind of by-election. I agree with that. But I think the other 2 points, as Anna eloquently put, we haven't changed. What we stood on our values, our own leaflets, our own campaigning when we stood in 2017, none of that has changed. There are big chunks of the manifesto that haven't been delivered, but everything that we promised hasn't changed. But the other big thing that people need to remember, this is what the big parties do. Mm-hmm. Yes. They want to crush the birth of democracy. They want to crush people like us trying to change things for this country. And this is the game, of course, that they will play. But we're better than that, and we think our constituents in the country deserve better than that.
No, Heidi Allen. You're the one that wants to crush democracy. You're the one that wants to overturn the referendum result. You're the one that wants to force people to vote again. You're the one that actually wants to break all the promises that were made by both the leaders of our main parties. I mean, that puts Alistair Campbell's spin into a whole new perspective. Goodness me, these people are complete and utter hypocrites. They do not accept the result of the referendum, and I have to say, I really think on their own this is going absolutely nowhere. If possibly there was a tie-up with the Lib Dems, and remember, the Lib Dems have had a very tough time, but they still have councillors, they still have branches, they still have money, they still have structures. Together with the Lib Dems, they might be something of a force in British politics. But honestly, the real demand out there in this country for a second referendum is now pretty small. I think they're all barking up the wrong tree. Michael in Nottingham is a new caller. Good evening, Michael.
Hi, good evening.
So, Anna Soubry represents, she believes, your values, your dreams, your aspirations. How do you feel about that?
I do feel like the new party do represent me and represent a lot of people who sort of think along the lines of me, with the centre line in British politics and the sort of more of a social but pro-business society.
Sort of Blairite politics, Michael, really?
Blair is a toxic name, but domestically he did a lot of good things in this country. I think obviously internationally he had some big problems, but yeah.
You could say that. But Michael,
Yeah.
isn't the truth of it, this group of people that have come together, what's brought them together is their absolute refusal to accept the Brexit referendum result?
To be fair, I think Brexit was always going to be an earthquake moment for British politics.
I thought that.
I was a Remainer. I still am. I still believe that that's the best option, but I'm also kind of in acceptance that it's going to happen. I always remember years ago when I was at university, one of my tutors turning around and saying, the problem with this country is we've never had a true revolution, and I think this is the closest that we're ever going to get to a revolution. And that's what I feel the British politics needed. We've had this duopoly for almost 80 years now, of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party back and forth. And I think it is time to break it up. It has got a bit too cosy, and it has got a bit too belief-led.
Well, Michael, look, I do agree with that, because I think, I have to say, I think so far, and 11 MPs have joined, and that's impressive in its own way. I don't think the way it's been handled has been particularly professional, but I do think it's a symptom of a desire to fragment and break up British politics. And I think maybe, Michael, that would be a very healthy thing, and you might find yourself having a party you can vote for, and I might find myself having a party I can vote for that we actually believe in, and that wouldn't be a bad thing, would it?
No, absolutely not.
But can it happen, Michael, without an element of proportional representation?
I'm not 100% sure. I did vote for the AV system in 2012. I can't remember the exact year. Yeah. I did vote for the AV system at the time because I did feel like first past the post needs to be changed. First past the post is not a terrible system, but it's not a perfect system. Obviously, we're now seeing this with the arguments that people are making about the fact that they voted for a Conservative candidate rather than Anna Soubry or, one of the others. So people obviously feel like the party politics does weigh very heavily on their decisions at the ballot box.
I mean, isn't the truth, Michael? Michael, we don't vote for MPs anymore. We vote because we like Mrs May or we hate Mrs May. We like Jeremy Corbyn or we hate... I mean, it's almost become a presidential type system. And there are huge failings in it. Michael, I thought the AV referendum was a disaster. It wasn't even proportional, it was preferential. But, Michael, I'm with you. British politics needs changing, even if you're a Remainer and I'm a Leaver. Jordan is calling from the Rhondda, another new caller. Good evening, Jordan.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. Welcome to the show. So, does this group represent you and your values and your dreams and your aspirations?
Absolutely not. I just started off by saying I used to be a member of the Labour Party. And I've always been Leave since I got interested in politics. I'm only 20 years of age. But I was ostracised from the party and called a racist by members in the party. But I think that's a very lazy view to take on someone who wants to leave the European Union, to call somebody a racist.
Well, wasn't Anna Soubry, Jordan, those clips I played earlier, wasn't Anna Soubry virtually doing that? As if, leaving the EU is some sort of awkward squad, swivel-eyed, hard right. She blamed Leave.eu and Aaron Banks for flooding her association with members. I mean, it is lazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's just going with the status quo of politics, these kind of politicians, absolute career politicians, like my own politician, Chris Bryant. He represents me in the Rhondda as my MP, but he has no idea how people in the Rhondda live. My job is working. I go out to houses and I work with families who have difficulty with drugs and money and all sorts. And they're the people who need our help in this country. That's who needs representing this country. And at the moment, the politics in this country is not doing that.
Right. And this group for you, Jordan, won't solve any of that.
Absolutely not. No. And
all right. Thank you. You couldn't be clearer. Neil, also from South Wales and Swansea. Neil is baffled from Swansea. Am I missing the irony? They call themselves the independent group, but want to be governed by the EU. The mob of 11 MPs are all hypocrites. 2 and a bit years ago, they were telling everyone we had to stay in the European Union in order to change it, and yet they've managed to leave their own parties. I get that. So the argument, both from Chuka Umunna and Anna Soubry, is there's no point trying to change things from within. It's too late. It's time to leave. Well, that was the argument we used in the referendum. Andrew is calling from Huntingdon and is another new caller to the show. Good evening, Andrew.
Hi, good evening, Nigel. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Welcome. So, do you now feel represented? Is there now somebody you can go and vote for with gusto?
Well, as you show today, is about representation. But really, these 11 MPs don't represent anybody, do they? Until they stand and win a by-election, surely. I mean, as you touched upon before the break, it's very hypocritical of them to want a second referendum. Yet they won't call by-elections.
I know.
How can the now independent MPs demand another referendum but refuse to put themselves up for a by-election?
Yeah, I think it's a big weakness of their argument.
Selfish and hypocritical, isn't it?
It's a big weakness, although the wave of publicity, I mean, you know, a Times YouGov poll tonight suggests they could be on as much as 14% with the Lib Dems on 7%, but it's very, very early days. Andrew, yeah, I think that is a fundamental weakness of their argument. I thought Heidi Allen's defence that we're not having by-elections, otherwise that would crush democracy, was one of the worst attempts at political spin I've ever heard in my life. But I also think, Andrew, this pro-Remain centre ground is already inhabited. I think the real shock in politics would come if Brexit wasn't delivered. That's when I think you might see a party that really could get big support.
Absolutely.
That's my feeling on it. You know, Andrew, thank you for your call. Lots of your messages coming in. Some of you do admire them for at least standing up for what they believe in, but many point out there's a lot of hypocrisy here. And the idea that somehow these are the pro-Democrats when they want to reverse the greatest democratic exercise in the history of our nation doesn't work with me. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:30 in time for the news. Well, breaking news, Labour's problems and difficulties have not got any easier in the last half an hour because Derek Hatton, remember him, the former deputy leader of Liverpool Council, the real hardliner that fought hard publicly against Kinnock back in the 1980s and was kicked out of the Labour Party. Well, he was readmitted to the Labour Party 2 days ago, which I said on air showed you just how the left was really taking over the Labour Party. Well, believe it or not, 48 hours after his readmission, after a 34-year gap, the Liverpool Echo have just told us that he's now been re-suspended from the Labour Party, something to do with a tweet he issued back in 2012. So that is a bit of fun. Talking of complex, difficult situations without any easy answers, the whole Shamima Begum case, and of course last night, when we were on air, we got the breaking news that Sajid Javid was going to remove her British citizenship. And I speculated on air last night. The reason was, I guessed, because she'd been born in Bangladesh and came to the UK when she was 3, that she had dual citizenship, and the European Court of Justice, our bosses, have told us we can remove British citizenship if they own another identity and passport. Today, the question was asked about the baby. What nationality would that be? Sajid Javid said this.
Children should not suffer. So if a parent does lose their British citizenship, it does not affect the rights of their child.
So the baby was born when she was a British citizen. 24 hours later she wasn't, but the baby is still British and has some rights. That's what Sajid Javid was saying. But since then, Bangladesh have said that she doesn't have Bangladeshi citizenship, and the international courts would rule now that if we've taken away her citizenship and she doesn't have an alternative, we are in breach of international law. So watch this space. We need to hear a lot more from Sajid Javid on this case. I mean, my view is she's chosen her state. She left us to join the Islamic State, but that apparently is not what international law says. Let's stick with this topic. You know, the 11 of them now in the independent group. They're not a political party. They're a grouping in Parliament. They say they share your values, your dreams, your aspirations. Well, I think they're trying, to me, they're trying to crush many of those. But they genuinely think they represent you, do they? Frank in Eastbourne is a new caller. Do you feel represented, Frank? Although you've got a Liberal Democrat MP, of course, haven't you?
I do, Nigel. Yeah, I do.
So if you wanted, if you wanted a Remainer, you've sort of got one already, really, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, to me, it's that I could not vote for either party, Nigel. Mm-hmm. I must admit, I mean, I voted to leave. I'll be honest with you, but I do regret that decision. I do regret it. But I'm
Because?
completely it's just got too complicated for me. It's just got way too complicated. I think that losing our affiliation with Europe, I think to me it's a bit much for me, really. You know, I mean, I've got
well, in fact, Frank, if we do change our minds, our affiliation with Europe will get a lot stronger, of course, because they're now going to build a European army, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, that's not something I'd be very au fait with, I must admit.
Well, if we're going to, Frank, I could tease you on that one. We could play that back and forth. I do agree with you. Brexit has become complicated because of the path the Prime Minister has chosen. She's made it very complicated. But do you think there's room you say you couldn't vote for either party, and I understand that. There are millions of people feel like that. But does this group of people who want to set up a new political force to try and overturn the referendum result, does that really have legs, given the Lib Dems exist already?
Yeah, I think the only way they could do it is to go in with the Lib Dems. That's my feeling on that. Whether they have enough power to do so, I don't. It's dodgy. It's dodgy ground, I think, to be honest. But I must admit, I have to respect, especially Anna Soubry. I'm not a conservative. Believe me, I'm so far away from conservative you wouldn't believe. But Anna Soubry, yeah, I think she stuck her head above the parapet there. Maybe she's probably at the end of her political career. I don't know, but maybe
I think what she feared,
the end of it.
I think what she feared, Frank, was being deselected. A lot of new members joined her Broxtowe Association, and Aaron Banks probably did have a hand in that, and she feared being booted out. But the idea, Frank, that she puts out there, that somehow Brexit is just a right-wing thing, that can't be right, can it?
No, I don't agree with that. No, absolutely not. I mean, I know people who have voted for Brexit for so many different reasons, and I voted. I mean, I'm Irish, and I voted to leave. Slight regret on it. I don't know. I'm a bit 50-50 on it. I'll be.
No, I can tell you're agonising over this. But one thing, Frank, you are certain of is two-party politics at the moment isn't working for you.
No, it is not, Nigel. It is not.
No, you made that very clearly. Frank, I thank you. The makeup of the independent group clearly demonstrates that Brexit isn't a left-right issue. If those who wish to honour the referendum are far right, Soubry's group must logically be far left. What a load of old nonsense, says Michael. The other thing, Michael, the word zealot. John Major yesterday used the word zealot. The zealots in the ERG group, the zealots that want us to leave the EU, to leave the customs union, to leave the single market, and Soubry used that word herself again today, the zealots. Well, all the zealots are doing, folks, is wanting to uphold the referendum result and the manifesto upon which they were elected. This is the establishment trying to change the language because they don't like the Brexit on, in my view. Leo is a new caller from Norfolk. Good evening, Leo.
Hello, Nigel. We met actually in November last year in Sunny Honey.
Sunny Honey, I was speaking up there, wasn't I? Absolutely.
You
well,
were,
Leo,
yes, we met there. You bought me a pint.
Did I?
You didn't really,
Gosh.
but I wish you had done.
Well, there we are. Very good. Well, Leo, I'm pleased that we're meeting for the second time.
There we go.
What do you make of what do you make of this idea?
Well, I'll tell you what I make of it, Nigel. I thought when the Magnificent Seven took off, then the Lone Ranger joined them. I did pray that they go back for the Three Musketeers, and there they are: Anna Soubry, Sarah Wollaston, and that Heidi Allen. Now, all I want to do is wish again that they go back tomorrow and they pick up Justin Grieving and Dominic Greaves, and a lot of them can have a party. In fact, they could join. They could name their party. They could have a party. They could name it the Doom and Gloom Party.
So, actually, do you think? I mean, if you're a conservative, you're a sceptic. As far as you're concerned, getting rid of these people is a good thing, yeah.
Oh yeah, but every cloud's got a silver lining. Let them go.
Yeah. Yep. Well, at the moment, Leo, the Tories are sitting pretty because, with all this polling data, the Tories now have a commanding lead, but if she's unable to deliver Brexit, she could face her own problems too, couldn't she?
Well, she could do, yeah, and we've got to stand strong on this. The people voted, and that's it. We've got to stand strong on it.
We voted in a referendum, we voted in a general election, and Anna Soubry and the others want to overturn it. And Leo in Norfolk thinks good riddance to bad rubbish. Thank you, Leo, for your call. I hope we meet again. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC at 6:45.
Show live from New York, only on LBC.
Elizabeth says, quite correctly, Anna Soubry is on LBC at 10 a.m. tomorrow. If you were calling in, what question would you ask her? Elizabeth, you're right. Anna Soubry is standing in tomorrow for James O'Brien between 10 a.m. and 12. The timing couldn't be better. And in fact, 10 and 1 it'll be. 3 hours she'll be on. I'd ask her, I have to say, I would ask her if I was ringing in, how can you be campaigning for a people's vote and deny a people's vote in Broxtowe, given that this Parliament doesn't expire until 2022. Isn't that, Anna, an act of hypocrisy? That would be my question. Now, talking of Broxtowe, Chris is calling from Broxtowe, Anna Soubry's constituent, seeing there's a new caller to the programme. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening.
So, your MP has packed up with the Tory party. How do you feel about it?
Well, I watched a self-promoting speech this afternoon, which went on and on and on. She's definitely, without any question of doubt, anti-Brexit. I can remember when, during the referendum, I was part of a small group who were going around delivering leaflets to leave the EU.
Okay.
And there was a meeting in Beeston, and I went there with a large badge on me label saying "Vote Leave," and the expression on her face was that I disapprove, which, and every time she speaks, it's, I'm anti-Brexit.
Yeah, she's very good at looking down upon people, Chris, isn't she?
Well, I don't really know about that, but she's definitely
contemptuous look.
Anti-Brexit, and I think they're trying to do as much as they can to disturb it or stop it.
Chris, personally, I find she looks contemptuously at people who support Brexit, as if somehow we are lower beings. What should the constituents of Broxtowe think about the stance she's taken today?
What annoyed me in the speech was when she says the constituents of Remainers. Well, I can assure you that there was a lot of people in constituency who voted to leave. So that was a total lie. That was.
But Chris, if she stands up the next election, she hasn't really got much chance there, has she?
Well, there's a lot of people in the area who are not really keen on the person. To think that she's basically a chocolate teapot.
Well,
I mean, she certainly has.
It's easy to criticise an MP, isn't it? But Chris, the point is, if this group becomes a party, she's not going to get re-elected, is she?
I wouldn't have thought so. No,
I wouldn't either.
She doesn't come over as one of the strongest MPs.
No. Okay, Chris, thanks for your call. Gordon says to me, the motivation of this group is primarily to prevent a no-deal Brexit. A bit more than that, but anyway. If May pulls off a miracle and an acceptable deal emerges, which is supported by Parliament, then this group will cease to have any relevance and be picked off in by-elections or wiped out at a general election. That is true. If we do leave the European Union, even with a pretty bad deal, this group will cease to have any relevance. I can't even imagine, once we've left, a referendum for us to rejoin a club like the European Union, as fractious and divided as it is, having any chance at all. Nigel, the likes of Anna Soubry have disassociated themselves from the party because they feared deselection. They believe this move will save their political careers. David, that may well be true. And Scott says they don't represent the party the people voted for, plus they don't represent the Brexit many of their constituents voted for. And Marilyn sums it up rather well, I think. on Facebook when she says no one really knows what they represent. Well, I think we do, Marilyn, but hey. Mark is calling from Ingleton in Yorkshire and is a new caller. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Nigel. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Not one bit. So, do you now feel, Mark, represented by Chucker and Anna, and is it all terribly exciting?
No, absolutely not. I found today's resignations rather opportunistic, but politically naive. I think the Tories today they let themselves down. That they've seen a chance to grab the limelight and form this new party. But I think now that they've joined, the Labour politicians that are sitting on the fence are now less likely to join than they were before. It made complete sense to me on Monday when 7 hard-working, honest Labour politicians with bags of integrity left the Labour Party, or should we say the Corbyn and his Marxist revolutionaries.
Yeah, and the hard left and the anti-Semitism as well. Yeah.
So there was a space for them in British politics. Mm-hmm. But now that the Tories have joined them, I struggle to find where the common ground is other than Brexit. Like has been alluded to before, that do the economic policies of Anna Soubry really tally with Chucker and Onions? No, they don't.
I don't know, Mark. I mean, they clearly have stood for parties with different manifestos, but I think at heart they're probably all social democrats. So I don't think the differences in economics would be that fundamental, or on the welfare state, or anything else, to be honest. But Mark, I just, short term, it's dominating the news agenda. But this ground's inhabited by the Lib Dems already, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think today's resignations make it far less likely that you'll see the kind of critical mass that this new independent party needs to gain the traction for going forwards. I think they've really shot themselves in the foot. I think Chucker Amunya, may well have kind of short-term glee that he's got more members with him as well as Berger, but the long-term outlook for this party is, to me, non-existent.
I couldn't agree more.
Fizzle away and die.
Mark, I agree with you. Absolutely. Thanks for your call. And my final caller tonight on this subject is Anthony from Loughborough. Good evening, Anthony.
Good evening there, Nigel.
Hi there. So, do you now feel represented, Anthony? Aren't you privileged?
I do, actually. I think it's a great opportunity. I've been waiting for a long, long time now for a party that represents my views, and the independent group do exactly that.
So what was wrong with the Lib Dems, Anthony?
The Lib Dems, I think they've lost their way. I mean, certainly when Paddy Ashdown was there, they were strong, and they had the opportunity there. But obviously, since the killer for themselves really when they merged with the Conservatives, wasn't it? So they lost.
Well, they didn't merge.
Seat.
No. They didn't merge, but there was a coalition. But Anthony, you say they've lost their way. Do you think this 11 could even ever find their way?
I think they're more dynamic as well, Nigel. I mean, if you look at the Liberal Democrats, the leader is 75, 76 years old.
Yeah.
They're not really going to ignite or put anything exciting out there to the electorate, whereas I think with Chucker and Moona and the people on board, they are very eloquent when they speak, and they've got lots of interesting views. And I have to be honest, when I heard Heidi speak, I was kind of excited and reignited.
So, Anthony, are you a firm believer we must have a second referendum and we must overturn Brexit?
No, I mean I am pro EU, but I wouldn't say it has to happen.
All right, but Anthony, let me promise you, Anthony, I've got to end. Time's out. Let me promise you, their main aim is to overthrow Brexit. That's what they're all about. But anyway, Anthony sees it as a fresh start. You'll be listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'll be back tomorrow evening at 6. At 10 tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick, but up next, it's Ian Dale.
Nigel, thank you very much. Back in 1980, Shirley Williams said this: a centre party would have no roots, no principles and no values. Well, a year later, she was one of the gang of four who formed the